most, if not all of it. That's weird. Oh, that was Angela recording. Okay. So, sorry about that. We know that most of us who were enslaved to this country came from West Africa. I've served on a panel with Sonja before, and I know what an amazing facilitator she is. Very knowledgeable, very concise, just amazing. Really, really brilliant woman. So I'm excited about this tonight. Um, I founded ZAMI NOBLA as a membership organization to increase opportunities for networking and social support, and to really explore the healthcare needs and coping strategies of Black women identifying as lesbians living anywhere in this country. So we're really committed to building a base of power for Black lesbians over the age of 40, centering service, advocacy, and community engaged research. We're the only organization in the country building power for Black lesbians by Black lesbian elders, by us, with us, and for us. And so all of our projects and programs are consistent with the aim to organize our base and build community. And we are especially excited about the North Carolina chapter. Many of you know that they've just been doing things all over the state this past year, and we're so excited to see what's going to come with them. And we are especially excited about these programs that they've been doing on Zoom. And with that, you can always visit us at www.zaminobla.org for more information. We're pretty much all over social media, so you can check us out there as well. And I am going to turn it over to Angela Denise Davis, who is our creative director, our podcast host, and editor, and interviewer, and our ukulele teacher. In other words, she does it all, yeah. Angela.
Thank you, Janyce and Marianne. I'm really, really excited to be here. Sorry for the lighting situation. But I've heard so much about the North Carolina chapter and have had a chance to meet some of you when you were here in Atlanta earlier this year. And it is just exciting to see what's going on with your chapter. And my role as the creative director is to make sure that I can assist you in ways that gets your content out digitally so that others can celebrate all the wonderful things that you all are doing in North Carolina. For instance, tonight we are recording this presentation because we want to put it up on the ZAMI NOBLA YouTube channel so that others can view it who are not able to see it tonight, but as well as to give you a landmark of the activity that you are doing in North Carolina. And so this is one thing we're going to do. And I look forward to also doing some things with a podcast where we can kind of highlight some of the things that you all have done so far. If you've not had a chance to listen to your president, Janyce's episode of the podcast, please do that because it's a perfect example of why it's important for us to catalog our histories and share the incredible stories of women like Janyce who have done so much for our community. And I'm just, again, excited about all the work that you all are doing and look forward to assisting you in any way that I can. Thank you.
And I just want to add that we believe that everyone has a story and we'd like to capture all of your stories. So if you're in the North Carolina chapter, please reach out. Let us know when we can interview you because we definitely want to do it. Janyce.
Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. I'll have a list at our next potluck so everybody can sign up. So without further ado, I want to introduce the speaker of tonight, who just wants to be introduced as Sonja Lee, and that's a powerful name right there. Sonja, I have worked with Sonja for many ways and many situations and avenues. She is a worker, a fighter, a sister, a friend, And when she went to West Africa without me, I was hurt. So we harassed her. We want to know what's going on. And she agreed to tell us all about her journey. So Sonja, it's all on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you everyone for your presence on this evening. I'm still excited, and this is a wonderful opportunity for me to share from my heart, really, the trip to West Africa that I was compelled to take. And that's the word I used the word compelled because as I was approaching my 70th birthday, which was July 30th, it was really placed on my spirit to visit the motherland. And I had not had any real desire to do that in the past. It just was a really strong call to visit the motherland, to go home. So I reached out to some friends who have been taking excursions to the continent, actually, not just West Africa, but they've been to Egypt and Kenya and South Africa. But I reached out to those who had experience, and there was a group going over at the same time as my actual birthday. So I decided to join them, and it was really an exciting time as I approached July, the July date. And I'll share a little bit about how that actually got started. So how the process got started. So I connected with the organizer here on the East Coast. Her name is Deronda. And she gave information sessions, very informative and critical pieces of information that were needed in order to obtain visas and yellow fever shot and just things to be aware of as I prepared for the journey. She suggested that I take the flight out of Charlotte to New York and then from New York to Accra, which sounded great to me. And so I booked that flight, and then I began the process of obtaining the visas and um, pulling the funds together and just making sure everything was covered. So I'm breathing. I'm a little excited and I'm a little nervous. So y'all just bear with me because it is such an exciting time in my life. I'm still celebrating this season in my life. There's something on this side of 70 that is just so liberating, and I'm just so joyful and joy-filled and happy. And so just go on the trip with me. So the day of the trip, I was leaving Charlotte, North Carolina on July 27th. I had booked my flight, I packed my bags, I'm ready to go. And the airline called me, said my flight to New York was canceled. But they rebooked me and put me on an earlier flight. So could I get to the airport? So I'm flying out of my house and I'm, getting to the airport. And then I arrive at the airport and ready to check my bags. And they tell me that all the flights to JFK have been canceled because of weather. So, okay, so now what? Am I not going? But I was prayerful, and I continued to be pleasant to the customer service reps, and they worked with me and booked me on another flight from Charlotte to London. And it was entirely different airlines. So I'm flying now. I'm on British Airways, and I'm flying out of Charlotte to London Heathrow. And okay, I can do that. That's just fine. So some of our other group are traveling the same flight. So you get to London and there's a layover. And then I finally board the flight from London to Accra. Accra is the capital of Ghana, for those that don't know. And when I boarded that flight, I was so very surprised to see everybody, all the seats were filled with people that looked like me. And it was such a difference from the flights I usually take in the States. But the energy was great. and the flight was beautiful, was smooth, it was safe. And when before we touched down, I had my journal with me, and just give me a moment, I'm gonna share this brief passage in my journal. And it says, the next steps I take, this is July 28th now. The next steps I take on the planet will be taken on the motherland. Flight 81 will land in 3 hours and 5 minutes. The aircraft, which was the Airbus 350, is full of people who look like me. Somebody flipped the script. 97% of the passengers are Black. And that in and of itself just filled me with joy. And when we landed, the entire plane erupted in applause. I'd never seen that before. Everybody was just so happy to be on land, and they started applauding, or we began to applaud. So Janyce, if you will, give me a moment so I can share my screen. And let me make sure this thing is on the right page first. And I want to thank, while I have a chance, I want to thank El Monique King for helping me put this presentation together. And I'm going to start these slides so that you can take the trip with me a little bit. Slideshow. So of course, I just want to set up the show. I just want to hide slide. No, I don't want to hide it.
From beginning.
Click on them.
From beginning.
Where you see that? Oh,
All the
way
way
over
over
there on the side there from the beginning. So also I hear the slide somewhere, but anyway, this is the group. Everybody can see. If you can't see, raise your hand. Or Janyce, just tell me, can you see
Yes.
this slide? Okay, great. So this is the group. That's me right there. This is our group leader on the American side right there. Her name is Deronda, and this is our local guide. His name is Ernest, and these are my traveling companions. And we left Charlotte at different, some of us at different times and from different airports, but we all arrived at the same place, safe, and most of us had our luggage when we got there. I didn't. So those are the travelers. So that's the flag of Ghana there on the right, and this was my first view of the motherland. We arrived right there at sunset, and as we landed, the city lit up, and that's our arrival in Accra. So we stayed at the Urbano Hotel in Accra, and it's a really small neighborhood type hotel in the center of the city, and the staff there are incredible. They really are. When we arrived, they welcomed us with open arms, and they took our bags. We didn't have to carry a thing, and I do want to say that it's a kind of a mom and pop hotel. If and when you decide to go to Ghana, if you haven't already, there are the major Marriotts and other hotels that you can stay in, but this felt like home. And I can say that in some cases the Wi-Fi was spotty, and that was okay. Everything was just it was just good. But one of the things that was startling to me after we got in our room and opened the windows for the view, my view was this. And I was like, what I saw from the airport to the city, traveling through the city, was a lot of this type of structures, and it felt like, okay, why does one of the richest nations in the world, as far as resources go, why do people still live like this? And it was startling to me. And I had to sit still with that for a moment. I had to sit still with that for a long moment. And at this time, I'm checked into my room, and I don't have my baggage, so I'm a little bit annoyed with British Airways, right? Because my luggage didn't make it over on that flight. But I was okay because Spirit says shift your vision, shift your focus, and so I did. I shifted my focus, and I began to see the beauty of even the sights and sounds that I did not expect to see. So that was a view from my window. But the next day was naming day, and our group took a trip to a small village in Accra. We're still in Accra, to a small village for our naming ceremonies, and we received our African names on this day at this village. So I think this was the next day, and this is our group here. And after we received our names, they wrapped put the glaze on us, or the garland on this, if you will. And it was from the fields in their village. And it allowed us to know that we are part of their home. We are home. So my African name is Yah and Sorma. And the Yah means I was born on Thursday, which I was, and Sorma means I am a star. So I thought that was pretty cool. So after the naming, we went to the W.E.B. Du Bois Memorial Center for Pan-African Culture. And I expected this huge museum in honor of W.E.B. Du Bois. As many of you know, he was civil rights activist. He was many things. First PhD in African American community. He loved the diaspora. So when he came to Ghana he was 93 years old in 1961, and he made such an impact on them. They made such an impact on him that he actually stayed there until his death, and he is interred here in this small museum. But the museum is full of artifacts and full of history, and the tour guide there was just an amazing historian, and very proud to be a descendant, if you will, of such a rich culture. So we went to this museum, and if any of you decide to go to Ghana, I really highly recommend that you go here and experience this museum. So there's some of the that's the inside of the museum, and just a sign, and it talks a little bit about the culture there, and the impact that Mr. Du Bois had on their culture, as well as the impact the culture had on him. That's me right there. And that's our tour guide. He was such an incredible guide, and so warm and so friendly and so knowledgeable, and his face was so familiar. That's one thing I wanted to share with you all. Everywhere I went, I saw faces that looked familiar to me. He reminds me of my youngest brother. And he had a sense of humor, and his smile and his embrace was just so warm and welcoming. And while we were at the museum, there was a wedding taking place outside of the museum. And these beautiful children just walked up to us and started talking and wanted to know who we were, and invited us to the wedding. And those sweet faces just were so welcoming, and again, so very familiar. So I took some pictures of them, and it felt like my kinfolk. Thank you, El Monique, for that. After that, maybe the next day, we went to the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum and Memorial Park. And pardon me if I trip over some of the names. Mr. Nkrumah was the first president of the liberated nation. Ghana was liberated in 1957, and this was the first president. The Memorial Park is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And you can see some of the statuary. And I was really taken by the fact that the African horns were featured so prominently at this memorial. I think I maybe was looking for drums. We always look for drums and think of drums when we think of Africa. But these horns really stood out for me while we were at the Memorial Park. So, and if you want to stop me before, as I'm going through, you can put something in the chat or just raise your hand and somebody will have to tell me your hand is raised. So at this Memorial Park, I had the pleasure of viewing this statue. And when we came out of the inside of the center here, there was this statue, this headless statue standing there with the arm raised. And I'm like, what is happening here? What is the man's head? Well, across from, on the other side of this entryway here, there's the head that belongs to this statue. And the story, as the story has it, there was some type of revolt and the statue was damaged. And the head rolled away and someone scooped it up and saved it until the unrest settled down, and then they returned the head, but they never placed it back on the statue. But I thought that was a really interesting piece there. So there was the headless statue, and as we were leaving the Memorial Park, I went over to take a seat on this bench, and there were children in the park, and they just came over, and I must be the children whisperer or something. They just came over and asked if they could sit with me and take some pictures, and they just adopted me as their noni from America. And it was such a touching time to be embraced that many miles from home with these children I had never laid eyes on before, but they knew me and I know them. So next day we left Accra and went to Cape Coast, and needless to say, we had to visit the slave castle, the dungeon rather. They call it Elmina Castle, but it's really a slave dungeon. So the tour took us inside the holding pens where hundreds of kidnapped Africans would be held until it was time to leave the country for good and cross the ocean. You all know the stories, but being on this ground, being in this dungeon was heavy. It was very, very heavy. It was also very interesting, but it was very heavy. I don't know if is anyone on the in the Zoom room, have any of you been to this location? Yeah. I see one hand, two hands. Yeah, so you know the heaviness of this experience. You can still feel the vibration. You can still even, it feels like you can smell some of this, some of the fear that and trauma that the captives experienced while they were being held here. And there's the door of no return. The story, as the guide shared with us, when the tide was high, the water would be closer to this exit. But one of the things, as we left the holding pen and made our way to this doorway, you had to bend over. And for a person, you know, I'm tall, but I'm sure there were people taller than me in this being chained and led away from their home. And they had to bend over. I mean, they literally had to nearly crawl to get out this doorway. It was quite an experience. So let me move forward. So after we left the dungeon, we had on our itinerary to visit this orphanage. And we had planned and brought gifts from America to Ghana to share with these children in the orphanage. And we had shoes and clothing and school supplies and money. And we went to the orphanage after the slave castle, and everybody was kind of down. But when we got to the orphanage, whew, those kids, look at the smiles on the faces of these children. Those kids greeted us with so much love and with so much joy. And by the time we left there, and they sang happy birthday to me, because it's, I went in talking about it's my birthday, right? By the time they finished singing, and this sister here in the black dress lifted a prayer for us, and it was just an incredible experience. It really was. So we brought gifts, and they gave us the gift of their smiles and their love and their hugs. And I can't wait to get back and play with them again. This fella here in the turquoise shirt has an amazing voice. I don't know if any of you have been on my Facebook page. You can actually hear him sing, and he's just incredible. The entire experience at the orphanage was wonderful. So if you get a chance to go to West Africa and visit some of these orphanages and see, we may feel like their situations are difficult, and they are, but their spirit is so powerfully strong and resilient. It's just amazing. So while we were on Cape Coast, we took a fun trip in the lagoon, in the Binion Lagoon, and we're not in Benin yet, so that's ignore the map there. But we were in the lagoon, and we took a trip in a little speedboat, and I call myself driving. Y'all don't ever want me to drive a speedboat, okay? But it was fun, and it was a lot of laughter, and a lot of beauty being on the lagoon. And the lagoon takes you out to the Atlantic Ocean, which is wild and beautiful on the west coast of Africa. Okay, so we left Cape Coast the next day, and we went to Togo. Let me tell y'all, so the ride from Cape Coast to Togo took a good little while. We were tired when we got there, but we were not too tired to visit the voodoo village they called the fetish market. Well, maybe that was the next day after the ride. But however, they called this the fetish market. And when I heard the word fetish, some things came to mind, but it definitely was not this. We arrived at the fetish market, and there were all of these things, these horns and carved out skulls and dead skins, and it was interesting, to say the least. Behind these shelters here, there are little stalls where voodoo priests will make amulets and cast spells for you. Now, before you get, the wrong idea, these were not black magic, if you will. It was explained to us that voodoo is a very positive, loving faith tradition practiced by our ancestors that was, and as many of you know, our traditions and cultures, the cultures of our traditions of our ancestors were demonized by people who did not understand, by the colonizers who did not understand, because the culture is so different. The faith tradition is so different. So still, we've been indoctrinated, at least in my upbringing, been indoctrinated to believe voodoo is evil. Well, there's just the opposite is true, according to what we learned while we were at the fetish market. If you go to Togo, it's a sight worth seeing. The smells might be a little challenging because they are, but it's a sight worth seeing. So, fetish market. See ya. While we were in Togo, think this may have been the next day, we visited the Togo Python Temple. Now, look, I'm not a fan of snakes at all, pythons or any other kind of squiggly things, crawly things. However, I'm in Africa, so I'm gonna, do some things different. I'm gonna do some things differently. So we went to hear about the python and this temple that's been erected in honor of pythons that actually offered some protection against rodents and against um, the way it was explained against people who were coming into these villages that did not know the lay of the land. Sometimes the pythons would take them out. These pythons, however, were defined and depoisoned and were pretty tame. And so that we were challenged with embracing the python. So here I go, embracing the python, or maybe the python is embracing me. But it was quite an interesting day at the Python Temple. Still in Togo, but I think this may have been the last thing we did in Togo, besides eat, of course. Yeah, so the next day, we went to Benin, which is the home of the famed Dahomey tribe. Anyone who saw the Woman King knows this is Benin, is formerly known as Dahomey. And we took a tour through the jungle there, and there was statues erected throughout. And this is just a sample of some of the statues that we saw while we were visiting the jungle. This one happens to be one of the more interesting ones, and I call it, wishful thinking. And it just kind of makes me laugh when I see people's expressions when they see that one. But there's several beautiful statues in this jungle, and it's definitely worth a look if you visit Dahomey. Famed Dahomey tribe has a lot of history in this jungle. Next, and we're coming toward the end there. There's a tree here. There's a whole story around it. There was a king who, instead of dying, at the end of his life, he manifested himself into a tree. And supposedly it is a tree that brings you good luck and good vibes. If you go up and touch the tree, something magical is supposed to happen. So I went up and touched the tree. Some of our group was like, "Nah, we're not doing that." But I said, "When in Benin, do be a Benin person." But it was actually very beautiful. The temple, the enclosure that it's in, it's very, very beautiful. While we were in Benin, we also visited the Gombe village, which is it's known to be Africa's largest water village. There are 20 to 30,000 inhabitants. I don't know if any of you have seen the Netflix documentary High on the Hog, but this village was highlighted quite a bit in that documentary. It is an incredible experience to go to Gombe village. All of the structures, most of them made of bamboo, but all of the structures are built on stilts. And I think there's one structure on land that is a school for the children, but everything is built on stilts. All their stores, their homes, their banks, whatever, libraries, everything is built on stilts, and all of their travel is done by these little skiffs. And it's an incredible experience to go to Gombe village. The village actually was founded by a tribe that was escaping another tribe, which was hunting them to put them in the slave trade. And the tribe that was being hunted found a haven, made their haven on the water, because the tribe that was hunting them found this lake, considered this lake to be sacred. So they would not fight or capture anyone that was on the water. So those that were seeking asylum or escape from the slave trade built their homes on the water. It's an incredible story. So, and it's an incredible experience to be there. While we were there, one of family took us inside their home, and they just made us feel so welcome. They passed the bottle. They had some moonshine in one of the in the bottle, and the guys and the guy that was with us, you know, partook of their hospitality in that manner. It was a really good visit. Finally, in Benin, we went to the Plaza of the Amazons, and this is where I felt my most ancestral energy. This statue was just called to me, and it's this statue of the woman warriors from the Dahomey tribe, and it's 30 meters high, which is about 90 plus feet. And it is spectacular. If you get a chance to go to Benin, you must go here and see this statue. It's incredible. And there she is again. Oh, she looked like me, doesn't she? She could be my great somebody. But that is those are the highlights from my trip. I can't explain to you how it felt in my spirit to be on the motherland. But it is definitely a journey worth taking, and I do plan to go again. So thank you for joining me on this short tour. And I'm going to turn it back over to our, I'll stop sharing and turn it back over to Janyce or Mary Ann. And I'll take any questions you may have, any comments. Tell me about it.
Thank you, Sonja. I'm going to, that was awesome. So I'm looking in the chat to see if there are any questions. So far there's not. Camille has, oh no, that was a clap. Help me out, y'all. So if you have a question, actually everybody is so quiet. And I may miss you to just speak it out. Do I have
So I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonja, for that inspiring and empowering presentation. I learned a lot. So how long were you there? That's my first question. And my second question, did you see any Black lesbians?
Yeah, 12 days. So I was there for 12 days. If I saw Black lesbians, I didn't know it. The question came up around the LGBTQ experience in Ghana by one of the people in our group, and who's actually, I believe, is a straight woman. I believe the entire group was straight, but me and maybe one possible other person. Our tour guide explained that the people themselves pretty, friendly and welcoming to everyone, but the government has some challenges with the LGBTQ community. So did I see any? I don't know. Short answer. Probably did. We're everywhere, you know that.
My last question is, can you talk a bit about the food?
Oh, yes.
Mm.
So I'm not much of a foodie. I have like the palate of a 7-year-old, but the food was spicy. Everything it just seemed like everything was spicy. So I pretty much stuck to the fruit and vegetables and rice dishes. Didn't eat much meat. You talk about food. So, but I believe the produce is farmed so much differently than produce here. You actually have a more authentic taste. The pineapple in particular was like popping. But I think because of the way we mass produce food here, it's a totally different consistency, different flavor. It hits your taste buds differently in Ghana and Benin and Togo, for that matter. Another thing that I noticed is that in the villages, in the neighborhoods in Accra, Togo and Benin, but especially in Ghana, the neighborhoods have chickens and goats running around like just free. Like, and so I imagine some of the fresh food comes from the the animals that are running free in their villages. And they do a lot of local gardening too. So that's my experience with the food. Now my group, they tended to eat a little broader than I, and they like the sauces and the meats and all of that. I didn't indulge much. I actually lost lost weight traveling, but it was good. It was good.
Did you eat in
Yeah.
restaurants or people's homes?
Yes, we ate in restaurants the entire time. Yeah. We ate in restaurants. There was very good eating in at all of the restaurants that we visited. And at the hotels, especially the hotels on Cape Coast, Togo and Benin, very upscale. And the food was delicious there. The service was excellent. I think you would enjoy it, especially for those that are adventuresome and have palates that can handle a lot of things. Mine is just not that developed.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Sonja. One of them is, do you know what the best time is to visit?
So
Here.
in my research, it looked like June, July, August maybe. And the weather was beautiful while I was there. It was humid, but it was warm, it was cooler there temperature-wise than it was in the States when I left. So the entire time I was there, the temperature did not go above the mid-80s. It hovered between 80, 85 during the warmest part of the day. But again, the humidity was pretty thick.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's a comment from Netta. She's thanking you, and she says she could feel the wondrous, majestic vibrations. It was
it was great. Thank you. I see a hand up. Is it Enchante?
Hello, good night, everyone.
Hey.
Yeah, so my thing, I've gone to Ghana several times. I go with study abroad students in the summer, but the thing that always stands out for me in the Elmina castles is the church above the dungeons. Not only that, when you walk those grounds as well, you're still stepping on urine and feces from our ancestors, and they're still embedded in the grounds. You can actually see that. So yeah, it's always the church above the dungeon, and people going to services, smelling those smells of our ancestors, hearing those screams, and yet today they still teach us about the Catholic Church and how important it is to learn those ways. But that always stood out for me, and it also confuses my students when they're walking through. You can see that transformation happen with them in their belief systems around that time when we visit the dungeons. But thank you so much for even capturing those pictures for us. And one more thing I want to say, in those castles, in those dungeons, I'm sorry, y'all, my puppy is just really acting out. Is the fact that the women were bathed before they were brought up to the governor's palace. And the governor's palace is over the dungeons as well. So those women went down in a hole, back up, and then up the steps to be with the governor. And that's something else that sticks with me when I think about the experiences of our ancestors, and particularly the women and what they had to go through. The men too, but the women soiling themselves and still having to go up those steps to be with the governor.
Yeah. Yeah, that story also had a heavy, very heavy impact on us as we stood in that space that held 400 women, up to 400 women. And they would parade these women out. If when the governor wanted to have sex, the soldiers would bring the women out into the courtyard beneath the governor's balcony, and he would point out who he wanted, and those women would be bathed and sent up to him. And the story was just and so that warrior in me was going to fight somebody, but it's very, very heavy. It's very moving. So, and I can understand the confusion of the children when they saw the church. And yeah, I don't even need to go there about the church.
So there's another question, Sonja. How did you travel while you were there?
We had our group had a bus, and it was dedicated just for our group. And I can say it was challenging so we were there 12 days. It was challenging to move so often. So we had to, to pack and unpack and load the bus and unload the bus. And that was challenging. If I when I go back, I will probably do no more than 2 countries and stay longer. So yeah.
And did you need a visa to travel between Ghana, Togo, and Benin?
Yes, need a visa for each country. The visa for Ghana and Benin can be purchased online. The visa for Togo we got at the border. Total the visa, if you get a multiple entry visa for Ghana, is $100. It lasts quite a while. The Benin visa was, the other 2 were less than $100 each. So they weren't that expensive, and they do last a good little while. You talk about the borders. Look, going from Ghana to Togo. So when you leave Ghana, you have to check out. And when you and then you cross the street and check in to Togo. And then when you leave Togo, you have to check out. And then when you leave Togo to go into Benin, you have to check in. So it got to be a little something, because there's no computers. Even though you got online visas, the computer systems, the infrastructure there is like being back in the 60s or maybe even the 50s. So it was a little bit challenging.
I have a question about money,
Mm-hmm.
but and there are 2 actually. One, I'm curious about how much the entire trip cost, and secondly, what was the currency exchange there in Ghana?
Okay. So probably between $5,000 and $6,000 was the total of the trip. That included the airfare, main cabin, the visas, the yellow fever shot, the hotels, meals. Some of the meals were included. Yeah, so somewhere around 5,500 to 6,000. And for you shoppers, take another extra 1,000 with you. So the exchange, $1 was equivalent to 11 CD and in Ghana, and the exchange rate in Togo and Benin, they actually use French currency, French francs, and I don't remember the exact exchange rate, but it's to our benefit as far as the exchange rate goes. So 11 CD per dollar goes a long way in Ghana. And Shantae, yes, I did do the slave rib, that bath, that whole story there. Oh my gosh. So there's a slave river there. They call it the slave river, where the captives, after they did their march across the country from where they were captured, they got a bath in the river, and that would wash off the was it 12 weeks that it would take to march from wherever they were captured to the coast, and they would that the only bath they got was in this river, and they not only bathed there, they also, especially the men, were shaved there, hair cut, and then they were coated with palm oil to make them more attractive to the purchasers. Again, that was one of those days I wanted to fight somebody. Yeah.
And did you get out to the countryside and downtown Accra?
To the countryside, not so much. We were mostly stayed in the city. So, and we didn't do any safari. So that'll be my next goal when the next time I go back. I want a safari, and I probably will want to go to Kenya for that. But it was more of a historical tour than it was safari. There was no safari.
Okay.
My grandkids were looking, but did you see any elephants? No, didn't see any elephants. Any other questions, comments,
A
concerns?
couple of more questions. I always have questions.
Come on, Marianne.
I'm curious if you mentioned that when you all arrived at the hotel, the staff was very welcoming. You talked about the spirit, the exuberance of the children, how welcoming they were. I'm curious though, as you went about from village to jungle to different places, if you were received as kin, or were you received as foreigners? Were you received as, Americans? I want you to talk about that whole cultural exchange.
Well, Marianne, that's really a good question. It varied throughout the trip. The At the hotel we were kin, but we were also rich Americans. Even though none of us were rich, but well, I can't speak to them, but I don't believe any of us would be considered rich. But we were welcomed like it was authentic, authentic welcome. It wasn't that fake, give me your money welcome. You could tell the difference. With the children, it was very much kin. But now when we were in some of the restaurants, it felt more like rich Americans. So it varied from place to place. Now, while we were there, Panafest was happening. The Panafest is their big festival they have, where the people from the diaspora from all across the Caribbean, the States, come together in Ghana to continue to promote the growth of the economy, the growth of the infrastructure. The infrastructure still needs a lot of work. Um, um, and of course there's always a party when there's when we get together, right? So there was in places where we felt like we were tourists because we were tourists. So it just depended on the location. My most favorite easily was Benin at the statues. That's my most favorite. Yeah. Yeah, I felt that thing.
So someone is asking, and you touched on it, the infrastructure, like the roads, electricity, and internet, and also about the LGBT culture, given the politics of the nation.
Yeah. Yeah, the infrastructure, in some places it felt like going back in time, for real. The roads were, as we traveled from Ghana to Togo to Benin, the roads were bumpy, and where there were towns, there would be speed humps where you had to reduce your speed in order not to tear up your vehicle. And also I noticed that there were barriers to speeding in places where there was commerce taking place. So there were a lot of stalls set up along the way where people were selling and bartering merchandise. And I noticed that the streets were really challenging in those areas. So I think that was to encourage people to slow down, stop, get out, and buy something. Yeah. Yeah, internet and phone service as well. I made a conscious decision since I wanted to be there. I made a conscious decision not to have phone service while I was there. But enough of my group did in the event that we needed to call home. But I made a conscious decision, and I felt good about that. Just to detach and be there, be present in the moment was important to me. Did you experience
Shante
rainy
wanted to know if you
days?
experienced any rainy days.
um, it was a let's see, did we had some light rain a couple of days, but nothing that stopped our progress or stopped us from doing any of our scheduled events or tours. We just, it's just water. It didn't stop us at all.
I'm curious about what drives the economy there. Um, you mentioned stalls. We know that there are service folks, but is there any kind of big industry? And the second question I have is, can you talk a bit about any class divisions that you saw while
Oh
you were
my
there?
God. Oh my God. Well, let me answer that one first. So, yes, the class division is startling. It's either you have or you have not. That's what I saw. So, it's in the airport area. There were there was a lot of construction, new construction. There were a lot of buildings. I would say some homes, some um, perhaps businesses that were behind walls and barbed wire. And across the street from all of that development would be impoverished home dwellings. It's, oh my gosh, it was stunning. It's such a stark difference. It makes you, really? You think those walls are going to protect you when the uprising happens? That's in my head, right? But yeah, but there's a stark difference between the haves and the have-nots. Absolutely. Yes. What was the other question, Marianne?
Um, just what the economy is. Is there? I think you sort of answered
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, what about roles between men and women?
That's a good one too. Look, misogyny is real.
993.
Yeah. When what I noticed when things really just what I was startling noticeable was the driving. So when we were making our way from the coast to Togo, I noticed that there was a lot of traffic, but there were very few women driving. So I asked our tour guide, and he looked at me like, damn, did you really have to ask that question? I asked him why, well, did women drive there? And he said a few. He said it's not the norm. Um, and when we were, where were we? When we went on the river tour, there were fishing boats, and all of them again had men on board, and the women were on the shore selling fish. And it was explained that the men did that. They caught the fish, and the women sold it because they're better salespeople. So there are truly um, roles for males and females, men and women, and they adhere to them pretty tight. You don't see it was seldom that I saw a woman drive anything. So LGBTQ culture, Monique, I have no idea. Didn't see any of us. According to our tour guide, there is a LGBTQ community that pretty much fly under the radar as much as possible because there are laws. Okay, I see that. Is that Margot? That there are laws against same-sex anything, and I don't know if that's written into Ghana's government laws or not, but I do know on the continent we have to tread carefully. I do know that. There are some places where it's illegal, and even for families that have gay folks, if you don't turn them in, the families can be charged with some type of crime, harboring a lesbian or something. I don't know. Western fashions, yes. So Western fashions are prominent, but not as prominent as the traditional African garments. And some you'll see a mixture a lot as well. Did somebody say weaves? You talking about hair weaves?
I don't see that. What about pants? Did a lot of women wear pants?
A good mix, yeah. I think it was a good mix, but they tend mostly to wear dresses or skirts. Mostly. But our group wore pants most of the time. It didn't seem to be a thing. It wasn't a thing. I'm sorry, who did I cut off?
Did you get a chance to visit any secondary schools or any universities?
We did actually went. No, it wasn't a secondary school. It was a primary school. We visited a second orphanage that was on the school grounds, and it was beautiful. It was hosted by a church, and I can't tell you which one it was now, but I did not get to visit any of the universities. Would love to, but didn't. Not this time. Camille, did you really ask about weaves? I love it. Y'all funny.
I didn't see that part.
But yeah, there's a lot of Western influence. There's still, of course, with the British having such a large presence there. There, of course, is a lot of Western influence, but the people are just so proud of their liberation that they're reclaiming their culture. Yeah.
Anything else? Did we get all the questions in the chat?
Let's see.
If you didn't hear your question answered, maybe you could type it in again. Oh, a lot of weaves. Okay.
I'm looking to Janyce to see if.
Okay.
Well,
So
I
again,
think
I want to. I'm sorry. I think that was it, and if it is, I want to thank Elmonique again for helping me with the slideshow. And her observations really helped to, I hope, help to bring the trip to life.
Yes. Thank you, Sonja. It was great. I think one of the things for me, because I too want to go, I was going to try to go with you, not this time, the next time. And as some of the questions have been before, it's the concern about being out or not.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, some of us don't have to even think about that because it's all about presentation and perception. So I'm rambling basically to say I want to go, but I want to feel safe to just be, and I wonder about that, and that's a shame.
Yeah, yeah. I would have that. I may have had that same concern if I had gone partnered, but I did not. And that too, for me, is a conflict of where I take myself what I expose myself to, where I spend my money, all of that comes to mind. You know, if I'm not welcome here, then I'm not welcome here. All of that comes to mind. And there's also the fact that that is the motherland, and I want to know that part of myself as well. So I guess I have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, have to decide for yourself.
Mhm.
I do. I mean, I have heard that South Africa is a lot more open to LGBT than the rest of the continent. That's what I hear. I don't know.
And it's fine. Angela has been to South Africa at least probably 4 times.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been her experience, that it's been certainly more freeing.
Mhm.
Well, I think it would be incredible if ZAMI decides to go. I'm all in and would love to go as a group next time. So it was kind of important for me to go for myself this time, and I'm glad that I did. So I knew one person in our group, and we're acquaintances, not friends and partners and all of that. So I was able to just be. You know, if I go with y'all, I'm gonna be looking out for you and all of that. And we looked out for each other, but it's at a different level with people that you know and love. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it might be great to organize a trip to South Africa, because I know 2 Black lesbians in South Africa who've lived there all of their lives, and who would be great tour guides, and who are pretty political and
Mhm.
all of that.
Well, that's something to put in our spirit and see if that's a thing we want to do. Go
Yeah.
Zammy. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sonja. Thank you. I have to also comment. I don't know if it's you being on this side of 70. Well, it probably is that plus your trip. Your smile is deeper than it's been in a while, and it's just heartwarming to see. And it came out in your presentation as well. So thank you very, very much. You're amazing. This will be seen again by others with Angela's help. I think it's going to be posted on our YouTube, right, Marianne? So other people will get a chance to hear you and to hear our questions and to think about it as well.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was amazing, as I knew it would be.
It's okay.
So unless someone else has a final word, I'm going to say good night. And oh, wait, I have a final word. What was it? I know, right? Ronnie's shaking. She's known me a long time, so she's shaking her head.